Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Hot Seat. In the Hot Seat this evening is somebody from an island, rather like Sri Lanka, but smaller in size. Nevertheless, all the way from the Seychelles is the founder, president of the Seychelles, Sir James Mancham. Good evening, Sir James, and welcome to the Hot Seat. Sir James, 1976, the founder, president of the Seychelles. But a year later, it was short-lived in sort of modern ages when we have democratic leaders who do all sorts of things, shall we say, and hang on to power. You served 1 year, but you were removed in a coup. How did you feel, because you were outside the country when that happened?
Correct, but one point which many people were not aware.
Yes.
They heard that a year after independence I had been deposed. They failed to take into account the fact that before independence I had been for 5 years the chief minister
Of course.
of the nation, and for 5 years the prime minister. So that, as a matter of fact, the people knew when they elected me as president who they were electing.
Right.
Especially a small country.
Yes.
So any suggestion, otherwise is certainly not correct.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Well, I had gone to London to attend the Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen,
Right.
which coincided with the summit meeting of the Commonwealth. And I was fast asleep in the Savoy, guest of Her Majesty,
Yeah.
when a phone call came, and it was news that there had been a coup d'etat in my country,
Right.
and that had been deposed.
So, what was your gut reaction then and there?
Well, I thought such a thing could not happen
Yeah.
in Seychelles, because when we made the coup, and this is something also which has not really come out, he was my prime minister, right? So the coup was not against just a Mancham government.
Yeah.
The coup was against a coalition government.
Right.
You see, it's the prime minister who took advantage of the absence of his president to make a coup. So I thought, well, it could not really happen, but then it had happened. And the first idea is, what do you do? How do you react to it?
And did you consider jumping on the next plane and going back?
Yes, well, it was made clear. I was far too popular in the islands for the new people, for the Mr. Rainey who's taken over power, to wish to welcome me. So
Right.
I had to take this into appreciation. But we did think about some alternative possibility of regaining power until I received a letter from our bishop, we're Catholic nation, and everybody knows each other, imploring that I do not try to get back by force, as this would create a lot of problems and would not be in the national interest.
Right. And so you took on board those suggestions and concerns.
Correct. I realized that I had worked very hard for Seychelles. I'd put it on the map. I'd got ourselves connected with the international world by being the first person to land in Seychelles on a wide-bodied plane. I had opened up the islands to tourism, and I was confident that I could survive. And maybe it was time that the people be given a chance to see what they could do.
And so you remained there for how long in England after the coup?
Nearly 16 years I was in exile, until one day the man who made the coup sent a fax telling me he had decided to return the country to multi-party democracy,
Yeah.
and that I was welcome to play my part, contribute towards the return to multi-party democracy.
So it took you several years before you could come back.
This is correct.
And so what did they do with your children? Send them out, or did they?
Yes, well, I was divorced at the time of the coup.
Yes.
But I had a son living with me. As a result of the divorce, I had a daughter and a son. Now my first wife got custody of the daughter.
Right.
And they are living in Florida, USA. And my son, where he was sent to join me in London.
And I note from various profiles of yours that you have an abiding interest in tourism. And it's almost as though you are credited with transforming or making tourism the flagship business of the Seychelles. I want to acknowledge your role in the field of tourism, but where is your passion greater? Is it for tourism or is it for democracy?
At the moment, over the last few years, and most of the recognition and all the awards have been in the field of reconciliation. Because when I returned after 15 years in exile, I said that I had returned in the spirit of the Apostle of National Reconciliation. I didn't envisage or didn't wish to become king in the kingdom of controversies. The country was deeply divided, and there was a lot of what one would describe as polarization, which is an easy thing to happen in a small country. And so there was polarization, and I wanted to see the country move forward. So I said I had come in spirit of national reconciliation, and subsequently I also promoted an organization for the promotion of national reconciliation between nations and within nations. And that started to get myself internationally noticed.
Right.
And I became involved in many international organizations and participated in a lot of conferences a bit everywhere.
So you kept yourself busy then?
Yes, well, it's an area very challenging, but very much in demand at this moment in time.
Indeed.
When you look at the world situation and you see most nations are divided to an extent that a lot of people are now questioning democracy, whether democracy is really suitable for all parts of the world, whether democracy does not sometimes hamper development which are necessary if we are to rapidly alleviate poverty and etc.
Is it fair to say that the population of the Seychelles is what, 90,000, and you've taken the wider picture, and you have almost specialized in reconciliation. In fact, that is what brings you to Sri Lanka this time is something on those lines, isn't it?
Correct.
And can you tell us what it is, what you're here for?
Well, I have participated a few times in some initiative of Swami Isa, who has founded what he described as a global energy parliament.
Okay.
And he has given this an international dimension by holding a lot of conferences in different parts of the world. And
different parts of the Commonwealth world, or the different parts of the world full stop?
Full stop.
Okay.
Not beyond Commonwealth.
Beyond.
Yeah.
Okay.
And well, this year, only a few weeks ago, I received an email to the effect that I had been nominated for the Lifetime Award 2016, and that this ceremony was going to take place here in Sri Lanka. And they wanted me to attend, and I felt it an honor and a privilege to have been so recognized, to find myself here in the rostrum with the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, and quite an impressive group of interfaith leaders from all religions.
And are you happy with the world order?
Not at all.
You are unhappy?
Yes, the world is in a mess.
The world is in a mess. To find out more about that, let's go for a short break, at which point we'll Sir James Mansham, the founding president of the Seychelles, will reveal all. Don't go away. After all, this is the Hot Seat. Welcome back to the Hot Seat. And in the Hot Seat today is Sir James Mansham, the founding president of Seychelles. Welcome back, Sir James. What I want to ask you is, how you say that the world is in a mess. Do you want to elaborate a little bit? Why is it in a mess?
Well, the world is in a mess because so many values and idols which we once believed in are now being put on the question mark board because of the behavior of so many big powers. First and foremost, we have to do the confusion within the United States, which has championed itself to many of us as being the representative of the best democracy in the world.
Indeed.
Now, when we see what's going on there, the mess is there, and I think it's a very sad situation because the influence is worldwide, and already now we see they're questioning the one China policy.
Yeah.
There's problem with Russia. Britain doesn't know where it stands, having decided to pull out of Europe. Europe itself is about to fall into bits and pieces. I don't think we have gone through a period which is as frightening in terms of the future as now.
It's frightening what you say, especially for the youth of the world.
Yeah.
And what do you think? How does, in the United States, because of the system that's in place there, the president-elect has actually lost the popular vote. He's won the electoral seats, but in terms of the popular vote, he's lost. So, when we're looking from out in, and we look at that and we think, hey, that's not, how can that be democratic? In our country, with our 21 million plus people and 14 plus million voters, we elect our president on something far, which we think is quite very democratic and rather equitable, which is, straight win. Even if you win by one vote, you won it. Subject to recount, perhaps, but So how does one explain this? You have the Americans there with this president-elect without a popular vote.
Exactly. It's when a situation like this arises, and you find the winner to be a very controversial figure, that you try to understand the system and to realize that it is not exactly the democratic way which is understood by the rest of the world, where in many countries you have presidential election and the winner is the one first past the post. Now here you got a situation where about 2 million people more voted for Clinton than for Mr. Trump. Well, initially when we go along the road of trying to learn what democracy is all about, we are told that democracy is rule of the people, by the people, for the people. So where lies the fact that the people is on your side and yet you are in opposition? So this is quite questionable, and the system has got to respect it because it has stood the test of time in America. But I think it means that you have a leadership which doesn't have total moral authority to speak on behalf of the people. And sadly within the States you have now also all this protest, and it appears also that in between the division lies a certain element of racialism, and where you got all minority on one side, and so this is very disturbing in my view.
And Sir James, have you followed the fortunes of democracy in this country?
Yes, where I have followed things in the Indian Ocean very closely. First, the old Indian Ocean area used to be a western lake.
Right.
The British were in Seychelles, in Mauritius, in Aden, in Colombo, in Trincomalee, where they had a naval base, in the Maldives. The old Western Indian Ocean was a western lake with the French in Djibouti, in Madagascar, in Djibouti, And suddenly the British took the very, very stupid decision to pull out east of Suez at a time when oil was becoming the predominant commodity in world trade. They decided to pull out. But what they did also, which was not very democratic, because they had said they are committed to liberate all colonies, and then they went on to create a new type of colony, which is BIOT, British Indian Ocean Territory. Because the American then was invited to fill the void left over by British departure. Their first interest was to build a base in the Seychelles, in Aldabra. But Aldabra is an island where there's about 300,000 land tortoises and lots of birds. And I was one of those who canvassed and protested against the decision of the Anglo-American Pact to turn Aldabra into a naval base. And we succeeded to get the support of conservationists in the US and in the UK, and then the government decided to share this idea, and that's where they arrived in Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia belonged to Mauritius, and Mauritius was trying to become independent, and the British had a quid pro quo: we'll give you independence, but we will keep this group of islands called Chagos Archipelago. In return, also we'll give you about £5 million to resettle the settlers. And they got the people, Mauritius got the people the £5,000, £5 million, but there was a cyclone hitting Mauritius at that time. And the British government had need for that money. So these settlers, these people from Chagos, started to stay in the shantytown to where they were living on the slum areas. And then the Americans then built the most important base outside the US is
in Diego Garcia.
It is from Diego Garcia they fought the war against Iraq, fought the war against Afghanistan. So nobody knows very much about what's going on there in Diego Garcia because nobody is around to get near to it.
Can't land there.
Well, yeah, because it's still British possession, at least to the Americans.
So it's not open to the casual tourists who might get washed up there.
And what is important, which we have forgotten now, when the Americans came to build the base there, there was no nation more against it than India, because at that time India was promoting the concept of Indian Ocean Zone of Peace, right?
Yes.
So they were always protesting United Nations and otherwise. But today there's no such protest from India, because India happens to be doing along very well from a military standpoint with the USA.
So James, have you met our former president, Mahinda Rajapaksa? Have you met him?
Yes, I happened to be attending the Commonwealth Summit meeting in London at Marlborough House.
Yeah.
That was the summit which preceded Sri Lanka hosting the Commonwealth here in Colombo. And interesting episode.
Yeah.
When I got to Marlborough House for that morning lunch with the Queen, Marlborough House was surrounded by people from Sri Lanka. They were the Tamil people protesting against the participation of your then president at the Chogam meeting.
I see.
And well, when it was lunchtime or before lunch, I went around to see where I was seated, and I had seen that I had been seated next to Prime Minister Ramgoolam of Mauritius.
Right.
But when lunchtime came a few minutes later, when I looked, I saw that it was President of Sri Lanka.
Was seated next to the president of...
myself.
Oh,
now,
next to you.
Yes. Initially, he was meant to sit next to the Queen.
Right.
But in the light of all these protests, Tamil protests, and British own type of diplomacy,
right.
You know, he was there.
So President...
So he was not in a very good mood.
No, he couldn't have been.
Exactly.
He felt let down.
Exactly. And
he
I
was
also
let
felt
down by the British establishment.
Yeah.
Did he say anything to you?
No, well, I could see that he was not in the mood to speak too much at that time, because this also must have taken him by shock, by surprise, because it happened so fast.
That's a bit almost under the belt.
Well, yes, but
diplomatically speaking.
Yes, well, that is why sometimes when we refer to our British friends, we speak about perfidious Albion, you know, because, well, they must have their own diplomacy, and I don't know how they judge the situation. And of course, they are hosting in their own country all these Tamil people, and perhaps, you know, it was politically convenient, but not, of course, nice.
What's your own take on that? The Sri Lankan government at the time was under intense flack and was the subject of various accusations thrown at them by the international community, suggesting that there had been violations of human rights, and they wanted the government to do something about it. And in the absence of that they would come and monitor these processes. Isn't that a very undemocratic way of getting about doing business? It's almost like you're wagging your finger and saying, you do this or else we'll get you. How do you feel that, why is there a need for small countries? It's almost like big business and small business. And here you have the big powers virtually dictating.
Yes, that's a very unfortunate situation, but it does exist. Now, I must say that I'm not myself too much au fait with the internal division and politics of Sri Lanka.
No.
To be able to pass comment on the international situation. But I do believe, as you do, that a lot of big nations make a point of abusing human rights over the rights of other nation, and they get scot-free, and they want to utilize this weapon of human rights abuse to infiltrate other community and try to dictate the situation. Very unfortunate. Now you're going to mess which exists in Syria, for example. For long, one of the cardinal principles of international diplomacy was non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations. But what we do see is that whereas we are not allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of big powers, doesn't stop them from interfering into our own. We did not see a group of observers from the Commonwealth to go and observe the election of Clinton and Trump, but they would insist that they come to oversee our elections.
That's a good point. I think as we come to the end of our discussion this evening, I must ask you this question because it has special relevance to some thought processes that occur in this country, and it is this: as the former president and the founding president of Seychelles, and with your huge influence and success of transforming the economy to a tourism-based one in Seychelles, and your passion for democracy and so on. Can you tell me, Seychelles is a tax-free haven or a tax-free outpost that you're, is that right?
Not exactly. In fact, we've just had a budget now.
Okay. You impose taxes?
I would think so. You know, it's same everywhere in terms of, you know, you want to make money, then you sell your land to foreigners, then you wake up one day to find that the most beautiful lands belong to foreigners, then you start to say, foreigners, go home, you've taken our land.
Right.
I think this human factor applies a bit everywhere.
What about offshore then?
Yes.
For corporates, is Seychelles an offshore?
Well, there was, when the big scandal blew up outside, suddenly Seychelles was making headline news.
Right.
It was suggested by some reports that there were billions of dollars in the name of Seychelles,
yes.
right? But nobody knew in Seychelles where all this money was. Obviously, Seychelles was being made as part of a stepping stone to again other offshore destination. So normally offshore was created by American lawyers and British lawyers who went to Caribbean nation and Channel Islands in order to minimize tax on people who are making a lot of money. So that if you had an offshore domicile, you would not pay tax in UK, for example. So that became very attractive.
The reason I'm asking you is that, as you say about offshore, and Seychelles has been in the news with the revelations coming from the Panama Papers and various financial leaks. There have been suggestions that the government of Sri Lanka, from Sri Lanka and the former government, have stashed away monies in offshore accounts in the Seychelles. Would you have any knowledge about that?
Well, the knowledge about is what I've read about.
Yes.
And what came up in the press.
Yeah.
But I have no other knowledge.
You have no other knowledge?
No, to be able to verify whether this is true or not.
I was rather hoping that you would put an end to this sad saga of claim and counterclaim. But there you go. We'll have to continue the search for the missing billions, if there are any missing billions. But on that note, Sir James Mansham, thank you very much for being in the hot seat. We appreciate your presence, and it's been delightful having you. If you're in town again, please give us a call.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sir James Mansham. On that note, that's it for the hot seat. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week, straight after the news at 9:30. Take care.